Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something pretty huge. Xiaomi, the company that makes those awesome affordable phones.
Yeah.
Well, they're making a big move into electric vehicles.
Wow.
It's a pretty ambitious plan, and we're going to break it all down for you. We've got a business case study, some financial data, the whole 9 yards. So, are they really ready to take on the EV giants? That's what we're going to figure out today.
It's really interesting to see this trend. So many tech companies are jumping into the car business.
Right.
It's like the worlds of gadgets and cars are kind of merging.
Yeah, and I guess nobody wants to get left behind. It's pretty wild to think Xiaomi started out as this little startup back in 2010,
Yeah.
and now they're this global tech powerhouse. Millions of people use their stuff every day. I mean, just think about their MIUI operating system and all those IoT devices.
It's like if you took all 324.8 million of those IoT devices, and they're all like smart toasters.
Smart toaster.
You could probably toast enough bread to cover a small country. No, but seriously, they've had massive success with smartphones and all those smart home gadgets. So I can see why they'd want to try something even bigger.
Yeah, like making cars. But that confidence might be a little, I don't know, misplaced.
Yeah.
Because even the big established car companies, they're having trouble keeping up with how fast things are changing in the EV world.
Oh, absolutely. The early EVs, those kind of clunky first models, they're a distant memory now. We're in a whole different league. It's all about electrification, intelligence, networking, and sharing, as the case study says.
Okay, so break it down for me. What does that actually mean for these modern EVs?
Well, think of it like this. There are three main things. You've got your batteries, obviously.
The heart of the EV.
Exactly. Then you've got the intelligent driving systems, all the self-driving stuff.
Right?
And then these super cool, futuristic, intelligent cockpits.
Okay, so each of these is like a big hurdle for Xiaomi to overcome.
Yeah, for sure. Each one is a whole world of challenges on its own.
So let's start with the batteries. The case study mentioned that China is actually leading the way in battery tech. Is that a big advantage for Xiaomi?
Yeah, potentially. But
Yeah.
it's not just about having the technology. It's all the stuff that comes with it. Like, can they find the right partners to work with?
Right.
And can they figure out how to make or buy these really good batteries without breaking the bank?
That makes sense. I'm really curious about those intelligent driving systems, though. I mean, Tesla's full self-driving stuff seems so advanced, straight out of science fiction.
Right.
Can Xiaomi even catch up? That tech seems so complex and expensive to develop.
It all boils down to their strategy.
Ah.
Are they going to pour tons of resources into creating their own amazing self-driving technology from scratch?
Mm-hmm.
Or will they look for shortcuts? Maybe partner up with some companies that already have that expertise.
Maybe buy out a company or two.
Exactly. There are lots of options.
I'm also really interested in those intelligent cockpits you mentioned. It's like cars are turning into these extensions of our digital lives. With all the entertainment and connectivity, I feel like this is where Xiaomi's experience with all those IoT devices could really help them, right?
Totally. Think about how good they are at designing things that are easy to use and making all their gadgets work together seamlessly.
Right, yeah.
They could use that to make these amazing third spaces inside their cars, where the car is not just a car, but a place to work, be entertained, and stay connected.
I like that, a third space.
But it's not as simple as just copying what they do with smartphones. It's a lot more complex to make sure everything works flawlessly inside a car.
So we've got a good idea of what's happening in the EV world and what Xiaomi brings to the table.
Yeah.
But now we need to talk about the battlefield they're stepping onto, the Chinese EV market.
Okay.
Fasten your seatbelts, because this is where things get really intense. The Chinese EV market is like the most competitive anywhere. It's not just a few startups duking it out. We're talking the big, well-established brands, too.
They're all fighting for a piece of the pie.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next part of our deep dive. We need to understand the major players Xiaomi is going to be going up against. Let's start with BYD, this massive force in the Chinese auto industry.
Okay. BYD.
They're interesting because they do almost everything themselves, making batteries, assembling the cars, the whole shebang.
Vertically integrated.
Yeah. And they've gone all in on EVs. They're not even making those old gas guzzlers anymore.
So they have a real advantage when it comes to cost and scale.
Yeah.
That's something Xiaomi will have to figure out how to deal with.
Okay, and then of course there's Tesla, the global EV leader. They've got cutting-edge tech, tons of devoted fans, and that whole direct sales model they do.
Yeah.
They've built this super strong brand, and they've got charging stations everywhere.
Two things that are absolutely crucial for success with EVs.
Can Xiaomi build a brand that's just as cool, just as desirable?
especially since they're known for affordability, not luxury.
It's a good question. And then there's Huawei, another big player in the tech world, but they're taking a different approach. They're focusing on working with car companies, providing them with software and hardware.
Right, rather than making the whole car themselves.
Exactly. So that's a key question for Xiaomi.
Yep.
Do they try to do the same thing,
Yeah.
use their tech know-how, but team up with the established car companies?
Or do they go big?
Yeah, try to control the whole process, from designing the cars to building them, like Tesla does.
It's a tough choice.
And then you've got NIO, another Chinese brand, but they're known for their high-end EVs and this really strong community vibe.
It's like they're selling a whole lifestyle, not just a car.
Right. They've created this awesome community of users, especially with younger, tech-savvy drivers. And they've been really smart with their battery stuff, offering things like battery swapping.
So Xiaomi has to figure out, can they create that kind of community engagement in those cool services when they're known for more of a mass market approach?
So we've got BYD, manufacturing powerhouse.
Yep.
Tesla, with their brand and their charging network. Huawei, who's all about partnerships. And NIO, with their strong community.
It's a packed field.
Yeah, and Xiaomi's coming in kind of late to the party.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Which makes the decisions they have to make even more important, like figuring out their timing
Right.
and their product positioning, plus their mode of entry. Like, how are they actually going to do this whole thing?
It's a lot to consider.
It is.
So we've been talking about how tough the Chinese EV market is right now. Xiaomi's up against some serious competition.
Yeah.
BYD, Tesla, and NIO. It's like they're stepping into the ring with some heavy hitters.
That's a good analogy.
Mm.
But we haven't even talked about the most important factor,
What's that?
the consumer. Are people who love their Xiaomi phones actually going to trust them to build a car? I mean, buying a car is a way bigger deal than buying a phone.
Yeah, it's a much bigger financial commitment.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this kind of weird paradox with Xiaomi. They've built their brand on being affordable, offering cool tech that doesn't break the bank.
Right.
But with cars, people usually think the more expensive it is, the better the quality.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about things like battery safety and all those fancy driver assistance systems.
It's like they need to find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
If they price their cars too low, people might think, oh, they're cutting corners, and that could really hurt their reputation.
Exactly. But if they try to sell their cars as like luxury vehicles.
Then they might alienate all the people who love them for their affordable phones and gadgets.
Right. It's a tough balancing act.
So how do they convince people that their cars are more than just cheap gadgets,
Yeah.
that they can really compete with the big boys in terms of quality and safety?
Well, they can't just rely on their existing fan base for this one. To really make a dent in the car market, they need to reach people who might not even know what a Xiaomi phone is.
It makes you wonder, could Lei Jun's reputation help them here?
Oh, you mean the founder and CEO of Xiaomi?
Yeah, he's kind of like a rock star in the Chinese tech world. Maybe people will trust him enough to give Xiaomi's cars a shot.
His leadership definitely carries a lot of weight. But it can't just be about star power.
So they can't just rely on his name.
Right. They have to deliver a car that not only looks cool and has all the bells and whistles, but also feels really well made. You know, like solid. People need to feel confident driving it.
They need to prove they can make a high-quality car,
Exactly. And that comes back to how they chose to do this whole thing.
their mode of entry.
Right. They're planning to build their own factory from scratch, which gives them more control. But it also means they're starting from zero when it comes to actually making cars.
It's a huge undertaking. They've got a lot to learn, and they need to learn it fast.
There's definitely a lot of risk involved. But if they can pull it off, they could have an advantage later on.
In terms of quality and cost?
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive a bit deeper into the technical stuff. We talked earlier about those three key parts of an EV: the batteries, the intelligent driving systems, and the intelligent cockpits.
Right.
Where do you see the biggest opportunities for Xiaomi, and where are they most likely to stumble?
Okay, so with batteries, China's already a leader in that technology, so that's good news for Xiaomi. They could team up with some of the top battery makers in the world,
Right, take advantage of that expertise.
but they need to make sure they can get a steady supply of really good batteries at a price that lets them compete.
Because any problems with the batteries, like cars not holding a charge, that could be a disaster for them.
Oh yeah, any safety issues would be really bad for their brand.
Especially since they're already trying to prove themselves in this new market.
Exactly. Safety and reliability have to be their top priorities. Now, when it comes to intelligent driving systems, that's where it gets really tricky for Xiaomi. Companies like Tesla are way ahead.
Yeah, their full self-driving stuff is pretty mind-blowing.
Right. And it seems like there are breakthroughs in autonomous driving technology every other week. How's Xiaomi supposed to keep up with that pace?
It's a good question.
They'll need to invest a lot of money in research and development. And they might even need to buy out some companies that already have a lot of experience in this area. They don't need to be the absolute best, but they can't afford to fall too far behind either.
Okay, what about intelligent cockpits? I feel like this is where Xiaomi could really shine, right?
I think so too. They're really good at making things easy to use and connecting all their devices together.
So they could use all that experience to make these amazing futuristic interiors for their cars.
Exactly. Imagine getting into a Xiaomi car and it instantly recognizes you, connects to your phone, adjusts the seats and temperature just how you like it.
That sounds pretty cool.
Right. And they can build on their existing MIUI platform, which already has tons of users. They could create this whole ecosystem where your car is like a seamless part of your digital life.
Like an extension of your phone, almost.
Exactly. That could be a major selling point for Xiaomi.
We've talked a lot about Tesla's fans, but Xiaomi has their own dedicated fan base, the Mi fans.
Yeah, they're really passionate about the brand.
So could they be a secret weapon for Xiaomi in the EV market?
They could be. If Xiaomi can tap into that passion and create a community around their cars, that would be huge.
Like, imagine Mi fan clubs for EV owners.
Yeah, and online forums where they can talk about their cars, share tips, maybe even customize them.
It could be a whole new world for the Mi fans, but Xiaomi needs to be careful.
Yeah.
Those Mi fans, they're passionate, but they're also really picky. If Xiaomi doesn't deliver a car that lives up to the hype, they could turn on them pretty quickly.
That's why getting the product right is so important. And we have even talked about the financial side of things. Making cars is seriously expensive.
Which brings us to the last part of our deep dive. Can Xiaomi afford this gamble? And what are the risks if it doesn't pay off? So we've talked about all the challenges Xiaomi's facing, but now let's get down to brass tacks. Can they actually afford to do this? Building cars, it's not exactly cheap.
You can say that again. I mean, the case study it mentioned, they're planning to invest, get this, $10 billion
Yeah.
over the next 10 years.
10 billion?
Yeah, that's just for their EV subsidiary. And then on top of that, you've got to factor in the cost of actually building a factory, which isn't chump change either.
No kidding.
Plus, they have to keep up with all the new technology, the research and development, especially for those intelligent driving systems and the battery tech. Those are moving targets.
Where's all that money coming from? Are they going to take it out of their smartphone profits, issue more stock, take out huge loans?
Probably a combination of all those things.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already got billions in funding to start with, but they'll have to be really smart about how they manage it all. This is a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Right. And what worries me is, what if this EV thing doesn't work out the way they hope? What if they have to start cutting back on other things, like their smartphone development, just to keep the EV dream alive?
Yeah, that's a real risk. Investors are going to be watching this closely.
For sure.
They'll need to find a way to keep their current business healthy while also making this big push into EVs.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Totally.
Whoa.
But let's try looking at it from a different angle for a second. What if this actually works?
Okay, yeah.
Could their EV business actually become bigger than their smartphone business?
Wow.
It might sound crazy, but the EV market is supposed to grow like crazy in the next few years, especially in China. And China's already the biggest EV market in the world.
So even if Xiaomi just gets a small piece of that, we're talking serious money.
Exactly. And they're not exactly starting from scratch when it comes to brand awareness. They're already a global brand.
Yeah, and they've got millions of fans.
Right. So that gives them a real advantage when it comes to marketing and building trust with consumers.
It's not just about selling cars either. They could create this whole world around EVs, like charging services, software you pay for every month, maybe even ride-hailing services.
Like a whole Xiaomi EV ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like what Apple's done with their products and services. It's a really compelling vision. But man, the competition is fierce, and people expect a lot from their cars.
You're not kidding. It's not enough to just make a decent electric car. It's got to be amazing. It's got to have that Xiaomi magic that made their phones so popular.
Right, right. And they can't afford to mess up the pricing or the timing. China's getting rid of those EV subsidies, so Xiaomi's cars need to be competitive right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
This has been one of the most fascinating deep dives we've done. The stakes are high, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
It reminds us that the business world is full of these big, bold moves, these leaps into the unknown. And sometimes those leaps turn into huge successes.
But sometimes they don't, and that's what makes it so exciting to watch. Thanks for joining us as we explored Xiaomi's big EV gamble. We've looked at the market, the risks, the potential rewards. Hopefully, you've learned a few things along the way. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep exploring.